All righty, hour number 2, San Diego sports leader. It is the Mighty 1090, Darren Smith. Let's say hello to Brian Dutcher. He is the AHC-8CIW. San Diego State is 4-1 on the season, most recently having beaten Savannah State 100-67. You can listen to the Aztecs this Saturday. Tip-off, 1 o'clock. They will be on the road in Chicago at Loyola. Back-to-back road trips at Loyola, then next Wednesday at Grand Canyon. I think people remember what happened last time the Aztecs faced Grand Canyon. Brian Dutcher joins us now on the Mighty 1090. Dutch, Darren Smith, good to talk to you.
It's great to be back, Darren, and we're excited to take the Aztecs on the road and see what we have in hostile environments.
What was it like having your full squad? What was it like actually having your entire bench there and all those different players that you could call upon over the last couple of games?
You know, it's really nice, Darren, and to finally get to some semblance of full strength. And we've got guys that are still nicked up, but not to the point it's keeping them off the floor. And I think against Cal, we saw how valuable Malik was going to be to the team this year, how much improved he was. And then Max Holtzel with his ability to shoot and rebound the ball, that, you can always say next man up, but when you have the main man, it definitely helps.
The main man being?
Well, in this, I guess in Cal, it would be Malik. Malik was great. I mean, he was sensational, rebounding the ball and playing. And then Max was great. And then you add those pieces with Jeremy and Trey and Zylan and Shrigley and all the guys we have and Dakari. It's good to have a 10-man rotation if needed.
You know, Dutch, it's so early on in the season. Yeah, I don't want to ask any sort of big-time overarching questions about your team because I think you would agree you're still trying to figure it out. But I'm sure you had things that you had designed before the season started and things that you're watching. What is it that the coaching staff is looking for here through these first 5 games, through the preseason here before conference play starts, which is going to be a little bit later on in about a month or so, month and a half?
I think it's taking care of the ball. Darren, I think Mark Ziegler had printed something that we were 18% of our possessions last year were turnovers, and we're down to somewhere around 9% of the game are turnovers, our possessions, and that extra possession or two a game really helps, and we're taking better care of the ball. We're getting shots, and then I think, obviously, when you add Malik and Max into the fray, we're getting better on the offensive glass. They're good offensive rebounders, and things like that bode well for the rest of the season. If we're able to take care of the ball and get guys that will go to the offensive glass when we do miss a shot, that those are positives that will hopefully play out through all the year.
Brian Dutcher, AHC-8CIW, that's the associate head coach in waiting at San Diego State. Aztecs will be on the road this Saturday at Loyola. 1 p.m. tip, 12:30 pregame. That'll lead right into SDSU football in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. Let's talk a little bit because I hear you say assists, turnovers, and I think about Jeremy Hemsley, who's your point guard. Now, we've had conversations in the past where the role of the point guard's kind of evolved, not just in the college game, but also in the pro game. Is he the main distributor? He's an interesting guy in that he's leading you in scoring. I get it. It's only 5 games. I don't want to draw any permanent conclusions on who's going to lead your team in scoring this year. But what is it specifically that you want from Hemsley when it comes to the ball going through him, coming up the court, and him being the facilitator for the other guys on the court?
I think the first thing with Jeremy is we like him going downhill or toward the rim as much as he can because he's very dangerous at doing that. And so we're not telling him to come down on the break and simply, walk it up. We're trying to get him with momentum going toward the basket. And then obviously if he's cut off or meets resistance to get the assist. And the last game, Jeremy had 9 assists and no turnovers. And then Trey Kell, who plays a secondary handler for us, or the point when Jeremy's out, had 7 assists and 1 turnover. So that's 16 assists from your 2 main handlers, and that's good basketball. That's winning basketball. With that being said, Jeremy's also a very good outside shooter, so we may slide Trey to the point, get Jeremy some jump shots from time to time. We've done that against the zone where instead of playing Jeremy up top, we'll move Trey up top against the zone offense and let Jeremy slide to a wing where you're getting more shots. And so we're trying to adjust what we do to put the players in positions where they can be most successful.
How many guys do you have on your roster who you're comfortable with taking the ball up the court? It's not just your backcourt, your starting backcourt. I would think there are probably other guys who you feel comfortable taking the ball up.
Obviously Darrell Williams is a senior, has played good spot minutes for us when needed. And on the break, it's funny to say, but we're comfortable, obviously, with Zylan and Malik pushing the ball. That's a hard matchup when you have your power forward or your center pushing the ball. Now, obviously, if there are people ahead, we want them to give it up. But I think people that were at the game against Savannah South Island obviously pushed the ball all the way for a dunk. And Malik is obviously a very good passer, so if he pushes the ball hard, he's able to draw maybe a perimeter player to him and then kick for someone else's jump shot. So on a fast break rebound, we're comfortable with those guys leading out on the break. And they're getting better at it. They're not turning it over. They're making good, solid plays, and we're comfortable with that too.
See, I remember from a couple of years ago, the reason I ask is because it seemed like other team strategies 2-3 years back, you had a different roster, obviously, was when Xavier Thames was your best player, like get the ball out of his hands and try to create a turnover. It seems like you guys have so many more options now if they want to decide to get it out of Hemsley's hands. Then you've got Kel, and then you got Zylan, and then you got even Malik Pope who could bring it up.
Absolutely. And then even in the half court, Darren, basketball has become such a driving game now. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody remembered the days it was all about screening and movement and player movement. Now with the way the officials let you handle the ball, I mean, it wasn't so many years ago if you turned the ball over at all, it would be carrying the ball. Now a player darn near turns it over in his hand every time, up and down, and so the offense has been given an advantage off the dribble. And then with all the hand check rules now, anything going to the basket, if you put hands on it, it's a foul. So the game has evolved. It's a lot more ball screening. It's a lot more penetration. So we've worked real hard on spacing the floor, penetrating. If you draw two, be able to kick the ball. That's where I think we've grown as an offense. We were driving and forcing up a lot of tough shots, so we're continuing to evolve on driving and then making the right play in space. And I think that's what hopefully we will continue to do as the year goes on.
Who on your roster would win a three-point shooting contest?
Oh, I'd probably say Max Holtzel, Matt Shrigley. I think you could throw Trey and Jeremy in there, are very good shooters. I think that would be the four best shooters and probably bears out percentage-wise.
So, but you think Holtzel would win the three-point shooting contest? That's your guy. That's the first name that popped out of your mouth.
He's shooting the ball at a high level. He's a very good shooter. So I would say I would throw any of those four in there. And you know how it is, Darren. It's like any other sport. It's like putting. If you start making them, they all go in. And so it depends on the day. If someone's got a hot hand and they're feeling good, they might win that day. But obviously we like consistency. So I'd probably say our most consistent shooters would probably be Holtzel, Shrigley, and then Hemsley.
Yeah. You think the other guys would be a little insulted that you picked Holtzel?
I hope they would be. I hope they're listening and they're mad at me right now for saying it, and then get in the gym and say, shoot 500 more and say, hey, you're going to say me next week. So I hope they do that.
Yeah, Holtzel, he is a relative unknown. People had heard a little bit about him. People probably in this day and age, Dutch, you can find highlights online and people can see different things and do all their own research without having to see it in person. But, man, how has he fit in here? This is pretty much, I would have to think that you're thrilled, even in a very, very small sample size, with what you've seen so far from him just in a couple of games. Exactly what you guys were looking for.
Absolutely. And I guess the surprising thing is his rebound ability. He's a very good offensive rebounder, and sometimes you think athleticism has a lot to do with rebounding. It's a nose for the ball, and he seems to have a nose for the ball. He goes on every shot. He knows angles, and he's proven to be a very good offensive rebounder, which is going to help us a lot. And then obviously we play him as a stretch four, a power forward with an ability to shoot. And so sometimes when you've got a bigger guy on him, he finds more space to get his jump shot. They lose him a little bit more. You know, if he was playing a small forward, they might be more attached to him. So I think the position we're playing at allows him to find more space on the floor with a power forward trying to locate him on the break or on a set play.
Brian Dutcher, AHC, HCIW on San Diego Sports, leader of the Mighty 1090. Who do you expect to lead your team in scoring this year?
I would think it'd be maybe one of three guys. I would think probably Jeremy Hemsley, Trey Kell, or Malik Pope, I think would be the three. But, back when we were really good, Darren, we didn't have a 20-point-a-game scorer. We had five guys sitting around double figures, and I'm hoping that's what happens with this team. Zylan's a capable scorer, obviously. Inside, he obviously hit a three against Cal and can drive the ball. You know, if Malik starts making his jump shot, to go with his driving game in that. And hopefully we'll have 4 or 5 guys averaging around 10 or 12 points a game, and that will bode well for the Aztecs.
I know this is old news, Dutch. You played Gonzaga at Gonzaga on November 14th. You guys had a short stack in front of you here, not a full roster, and you're going into a hostile environment, and you lost by 20 plus. What was the takeaway, though? I mean, what at the end of the year do you think you'll look back on and say, we're better off having played that game because of why?
An early measuring stick shows you your flaws right away, shows you what you really need to work on to become good. Sometimes you play lesser teams and you win, and you might see a glitch or two, but all your faults are exposed immediately in a game like Gonzaga. And I guess the surprising thing is, they were not a big zone team, and they hadn't zoned anybody in the preseason or their first couple of games, and then they played us probably 75% in zone, and we're a much better zone team offensively than we showed that game, and maybe it was because it was early in the year. We hadn't spent the time that we needed to. But I think we've improved our zone offense from that game, obviously worked harder on it and become a better zone offensive team because of that game. I don't think people will be comfortable zoning us. You got Shrigley and Hotzel, and Savannah tried to zone us, and we were just getting open shots for very good shooters. So maybe it was our zone offense improved from that game a lot.
43-point shots, by the way, against Savannah State. That's something else.
Yeah, that is something else. And like I said, the danger with playing them is they shoot a lot of threes, and we wanted to be careful that we didn't take bad ones because they give you a lot. But I thought the ones we took were from good shooters at good pace and unguarded, and so you have to shoot the open shot, and I thought we did a good job of that against them.
All right, I got to ask here because we're talking a little bit about Gonzaga, about Savannah State, and you've spent your life in college basketball. You're much smarter than I am, so I hope you can explain this to me, Dutch. Explain to me this sport, college basketball. You lose to Gonzaga. It helps you, right? It's good for your resume that you lost to Gonzaga, as much as you guys don't want to hear that. But you wallop Savannah State, and it hurts your resume. Can you help set me straight and explain how that is, that you could lose by 20 to Gonzaga, and it helps you, and then you beat Savannah State by 30-plus, and it hurts you?
It's a lot to do with strength of your schedule, what the perceived rankings of the teams you play in are, and when you play a team that might be in the low 200s RPI-wise, even though you beat them and beat them convincingly, they punish you for it. And a classic example is like Michigan State, who is sitting at 4-4, who's got 4 losses already, but because the strength of schedule is so strong, their RPI is really high. And so at some level, RPI is important, but you have to win games. So I think you could we could be sitting at 4-4 with a high RPI, but at some level they're going to say they played these teams, but they have to beat a couple of them. So I think in the end you have to win games. You have to play the schedule you have. You want to schedule competitively, but you have to win games. RPI alone is not going to help you if you have a 500 record.
Well, what do you think helps you more in the long run? Because you're the coach, you don't have to deal with all these numbers. That's for the information people. But which game do you think will help your team in the long run more, the loss to Gonzaga or the win against Savannah State?
Well, from an RPI standpoint, it'll be the loss to Gonzaga if they continue to do what they're doing and win a lot of games. Obviously it would have been better for us if we were more competitive because you have to pass it at some level, the eye test. They have to look at that game and say the Aztecs were competitive with the Zags, if it's a closer game. So there's a lot of things that go into it. That's why it's always interesting come March what happens with the selection committee because there are so many different things. This might be a year they say, well, their RPI wasn't good enough. Well, if they don't want to use RPI, they'll say, well, at some level they didn't pass the eye test. So there is no real formula. That's the problem with scheduling with games. It's just a lot of it. You're looking at it football right now, all this conversation about who deserves to be in the 4-team playoff. And Penn State, who beat Ohio State, well, they don't have any chance to get there. Even if they win, Ohio State's still going to represent the Big Ten, even though they lost to Penn State. And so at some level, it's frustrating to a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of teams, because there's a human element in it. As the people say, well, we think they're better. And so it's hard to get that measuring stick where everybody wants it, where it's accurate all the time.
Yeah, and it is, and it's really, really early on, so it can make your head spin if you spend too much time thinking about this. You guys are 4-1. You're hitting the road. You got a quick scouting report on the road at Loyola.
Loyola's got a good team this year. Surprising, I think they were picked in 7th in the Missouri Valley, but they've got a win over Washington State, a Power 5 team. They lost by 2 points at North Carolina State, an ACC team, and so they've played some good teams, and they played them really well. So they space the floor, they shoot the ball, they play small ball, they'll try to spread us, but they're well coached. and it's a road game, and it's going to be important to both teams. So I'm interested to get in there after traveling, all day Friday to get there. I shouldn't say all day, but traveling time zones to get there, arrive in the evening, and then play a 3 o'clock Chicago time game to see how we respond to that.
Hey, Dutch, a pleasure. Thanks so much. Keep it rolling. We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Darren.